For all our delegates that are still outside, may you please make your way back into the tent so that we can start our program. We're running behind time. The next panel discussion will be on battery storage. We know that battery storage technologies are essential to speeding up the replacement of fossil fuels. And it's quite interesting that they will play a critical role in green energy supplies and responding to electricity demands. But I'm not the expert here. Our engineer, Bosch, who's the managing director from Nyangani Renewable Energy, will come and give his expert thoughts around battery storage. After Engineer Bosch is done, we'll get into our panel discussion that our MC Wilson Chingwezi will be facilitating. As Engineer Bosch comes up to give us his remarks on battery storage, may we please give him a round of applause?
Good morning, and all protocols observed. I'm sure a lot of you are hoping that I'm going to give you tips on how to get batteries at a discount for your homes. Unfortunately, that's not what this talk is about today. This is about large-scale battery storage with a particular focus on lithium iron phosphate batteries. Some use cases for large battery storage systems: duck curve mitigation, renewable energy generation profile stabilization, network support, load shifting, and peak shaving. This is a duck curve. This particular one is from California in the US. The duck curve, each line represents the net load. This is the load or demand in total, less that which is supplied by PV solar power. Each line represents a year, and as you can see, as the years progress, more PV power supply comes onto their local grid. As you can see, as the years progress too, that the belly of the duck goes lower and lower. That is the demand that needs to be supplied by non-renewable energy sources such as coal and base load stations. You can see that around midday, there's a serious over-generation risk. That means you're trying to reduce the base load stations by too much. And then a significant ramp needs to take place in the neck of the duck to meet the evening peak when PV can't supply power. Now, the ramp rate of a traditional coal thermal power station is about 1% of installed capacity per minute. Large-scale hydro is between 10 and 20% of installed capacity per minute. But battery storage can do up to 100% per minute. So battery storage could really help in mitigating the crisis which is presented by that incredible ramp to meet the evening peak. But what the batteries also could do is flatten the belly a bit. We might go from dad bod to six-pack by charging with the overgeneration during the midday and then discharging at the time that the major ramp is needed for evening peak. It will also result in the reduction of curtailment. So during the midday, specifically in the case of California, the PV sites may be told to reduce their power output because of the overgeneration. If they could keep their power output the same and put the excess into battery storage, it reduces the amount of curtailment that they undergo. Also interesting in California is that on some days, in the middle of the day, the energy price on their energy market falls to 0 cents per kilowatt hour. Renewable energy generation profile stabilization. So what we found at our Riverside plant at Mutoko, an aerial photo of which you can see in the background, is that on cloudy days, where you've got intermittent shading of the panels, you can go from 100% output down to 10% and back up to 100% within 10 minutes. That is a lot of variability in a short time space. So large-scale storage would be able to flatten the output profile by discharging at the time of the cloud and then charging again once the cloud is passed. There's also the option of shifting the time of use or time of generation. So often wind farms produce a lot of energy in 2 a.m. in the morning. That is when the base load stations are carrying most of the load, and you don't really want a lot of intermittent renewable energy. So when the wind farms are generating at 2 a.m., they could be charging the batteries, which will then be discharged at the time of morning peak. Transmission and distribution network support. So if we take a case of a remote substation where the transmission line is at full capacity during peak, you need to upgrade the transmission infrastructure in order to cater for increased demand at that remote substation. It's very costly, especially if that remote substation is hundreds of kilometers from a main substation. But in order to delay the need to upgrade the entire transmission line, you could put large-scale battery storage at that substation and charge it during off-peak hours and then discharge it during peak hours, relieving the stress on the transmission line during the peak time and delaying the need to upgrade the entire length of the transmission line. Backup power will supply for short periods. So say if you have a trip at one of the large power stations or big thermal units, the battery storage could ramp up their output in the time that it takes from the trip of the large unit until another large unit, such as Hydro at Kariba, picks up that load which has come off because of the trip of the large generating station. It smoothens the disturbances in the network. Specifically in distribution, battery storage can be used in local networks to reduce the incidence of over or under voltage and improve the power supply at local level to comply with the grid code and distribution code stipulations. So it could be used to inject reactive power, withdraw reactive power, and also provide frequency support. You will have noticed often at your home, especially during peak time, that the voltage at your plugs could be going as low as 180 volts during peak time. But then during off-peak, it could go as high as 250 volts. Battery storage could help to keep the distribution voltage within the parameters stipulated in the codes. This is quite an interesting use case, and they've been making use of it in South Africa. Peak shaving. So if you are a maximum demand customer, there's a specific charge related to maximum demand as well as your energy usage. So if you can reduce your maximum demand by discharging your battery at that time, you reduce the amount that you are charged for your maximum demand. So you would charge the batteries at a time which is off-peak, and then you would discharge it at the time of peak to reduce your maximum demand at that time. And then load shifting would be charging the battery during a time of use where your tariff is lowest, and then discharging your battery during a time when the tariff is highest. significant opportunities exist within the large-scale lithium iron phosphate battery economy. Eskom at the moment are rolling out their first stage of big battery storage development, and it's 1,440 megawatt hours. About 800 megawatt hours are in construction at the moment. Most of this is to do with stabilizing the transmission and distribution grids. There's also a private sector rollout. Skatec are under the REIPP 5 of South Africa developing a 500 megawatt PV plant that also has a very large battery component to it for the same reason. There will be an exponential increase in demand in lithium ion storage, as we've already witnessed, and this will only increase with the increased uptake of electric vehicles, as well as this large-scale stationary storage that we've spoken about. Now, most of the minerals that we need to manufacture these batteries are available in Southern Africa, as you can see in that table. So why are we exporting all of these to have the cells manufactured and then importing the complete product? An opportunity exists within Southern Africa to make our own cells, develop our own BMSs, construct our own batteries, and use them locally and export them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Bosch. You make a very strong case there. Battery storage. I think the question I'm going to just give to the responsible authorities is, where are we in terms of battery storage in Zimbabwe? How much of it have we got? And in your research or in your findings, where are we, if you can just give us a snippet of that?
As far as I'm aware, we are mostly using battery storage at industrial, commercial, and domestic level. We, of course, have Kariba, which is a very big battery. It's not a lithium-ion battery. But in terms of lithium-ion phosphate storage, I'm not aware that we're using it at any scale in the support of the transmission and distribution system.
Okay. Thank you very much. You may take your seat. If anyone can also tackle that question at a national level where we are, it will help our discussion. Our discussion now is about transitioning into the future. Renewable energy is the answer. I'm going to ask my good friend Victor Otedzi to come and join the panel. My brother Borothi from Jinko Solar. May you also please come through. Engineer Siakachena, please. I'm going to ask Borothu to just give us a 5-minute snippet while we go through the discussion. I take it your presentation is ready. Okay, he's just going to make a 5-minute presentation, and then we'll go into the discussions of the day.
Thank you so much. So, as Jinko, as I mentioned earlier yesterday, is that we also into the energy storage space. And as you can see, in terms of our portfolio, we are looking at our energy storage, the residential from 1 kilowatt hour to 50 kilowatt hour. Then we have the C&I market space, 50 kilowatt hour to 2 megawatt hour. Then we also have greater than 2 megawatt hour for the utilities. So in terms of the roadmap, as you can see, for the residential space, we are looking at availability starting Q2 this year. Then at the far end, where we have the sun tank, we are looking at storage solutions availability from, from Q1 2023. So this is what we are looking at in terms of the architecture for our storage. So you can see we have the modules For the residential, then we have the battery. It comes together with the BMS. Then in terms of the sizes, we have single phase from 3 kilowatt to 8 kilowatt. Then we also have three phase 10 kilowatt. Then we also have the high voltage 12 kilowatt hour. So this is an architecture of our storage solutions in terms of the C&I market. So it comes with the PCS, the battery pack, the DC cabinet called do the DC-DC conversion. Then we also have the heating, ventilation, and air cooling. And we also have a fire suppression unit inside the container. So we're able to give you a full solution. It is important again to mention about our monitoring system. It's real time. So once we deploy our solutions, you can be able to see how much you're generating. And this is a platform that we are using in terms of seeing how much you're able to generate. So what are some of the value that we add in terms of warranty and after sales support? So we've given 5 years warranty, which is extendable for 10 years. Then you also have a 10 years performance warranty. You also give a 24/7 online support. Then it is very important to mention about capacity building, training, and we're also giving online troubleshooting. So I would like to share our reference list. So this is a project that we have supplied in Zimbabwe. It's called the Bindura Clinic. It's a 5 kVA system. As you can see, it comes with the inverter and the battery pack. And the technology is purely lithium ion. So then we have a 8 kVA backup. This is a sample. So it's in Johannesburg. So in China, this is one of our largest. It's 20 megawatt of storage. It's powering one of our factories in China, in Hainan. So storage is possible. In Nigeria, we are collaborating with the REA, Ministry of Energy. So we are supplying most of the mini grids in Nigeria. As you can see, the container comes with the battery pack, everything under one roof. We have Djibouti. We supply this in Djibouti. So it's a 20-feet container with all our lithium cells. And it's supplying a remote off-grid community. We have Mozambique. We are again collaborating with Funai. We have supplied these to an EPC, and we are currently collaborating with more EPCs in terms of mini grids. So these are 690 kilowatt hour LFP battery. So Kenya, this is a project with UNDP. So it's powering a refugee camp, as you can see. This was commissioned in July last year, and it's about 1.1 megawatt hour of storage. And you can see we still have the monitoring platform. Thank you.
I'm generally a layman when it comes to this area, but I'm just thinking, do I really need solar panels if I can just put batteries in my house? And ZESA is going to provide power for about 10 hours to my house. Do I really need solar panels? Millicent, don't worry, I'm not doing any disservice. I can see you cringing. It's a discussion that I would like us to just open up to the panelists. Anyone willing to take that question? Do we think it's a transitional issue, or, well, we can solve the issue with just batteries?
So our view as an OEM, by the fact that we provide storage, it is important to integrate solar modules with your storage solutions, because it is essential to make sure that you're able to charge your batteries. So other than relying on the normal grid power. So yes, it is important that you integrate your solution with PV. And it is important to mention that when you say PV, because one of the main, or some of the feedback that we're getting in the market, why some of these solutions are failing, is compromising on the design solution. So it is important as you consider to design your storage, you also design sufficient power in terms of PV to be able to charge your batteries, because that will affect the longevity of the batteries. and that again affects the warranty. So it is important to have PV. Thank you.
Victor, can you share your experience, I mean, from the work that you've been doing and in terms of transitioning? Where does battery storage have a place in the work that you're doing?
Thank you, Wilson. In terms of transitioning and looking forward, first of all, you know, for the last 3 years, we were talking about conditions for financing in the country. And it was actually barely possible to finance these projects, even from local financing sources. It's very important that we step back. At this point last year, we're asking His Excellency to sort of support, you know, renewable energy projects in the country. And I would like to emphasize that, you know, looking forward, I mean, how exciting it is. The pronouncement by the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Energy in December last year that they would support up to even 1,000 megawatts through a selection process for renewable energy projects through the government implementation program. I think it's very exciting. I think that is what, in my view, is shaping the future, the immediate future of renewable energy in the country. Just to be clear on what that implementation agreement says, to the extent that the utility is unable to meet its obligations to an IPP, then the government steps in and pays, which is wonderful. That's a payment guarantee. And whatever you receive in local currency, there is also a convertibility guarantee. So the government will, you know, commits to convert all that money into foreign currency. If you remember what our issue was, we were always saying, yes, we can raise some of the money domestically, but there is no country that has been able to successfully deploy on a large scale these renewables without the support of also foreign investors. And their concerns were, the credit strength and also convertibility. And for the last 3 years, we've been asking for them. And finally, we've been given almost like you could say a check, an underwriting check for about 1,000 megawatts. So that's very important. Now, when it comes to specifically on the issue of, you know, battery storage and things like that, we are working with, you know, on a commercial and industrial with a large customer. And we will also be deploying a 9 megawatt battery, you know, with 18 megawatt storage. This is to smoothen their process. This is a cement manufacturer. So they need smooth supply of electricity, you know, combining that with PV solar, with grid power and things like that. And we are seeing a lot of inquiries in that direction from a number of large, you know, consumers, whether it's in the mining space, they're also looking for storage solutions as well. So let me leave it for now.
Thank you for that. And maybe just ask the regulator, engineer, how far have we gone with this subject where we're looking at battery storage in terms of incentives or policy that help drive this specific area?
I think from a regulatory point of view, we obviously recognize this is a service that can be offered to the grid. And we are looking at ways of licensing people to provide this service and provide appropriate tariffs as an incentive for this service.
So from your experience, Engineer Bosch, as in Zimbabwe and at your own plants, what are the challenges that we might find in this space for people wanting to work in that area?
It's still quite a new technology to us. We've been keeping our eye on it. There's a very high capital component. As I mentioned, at the moment we're not manufacturing any of this locally. It's all imported. And so for now, we've just been keeping our eye on it, as well as the local energy market, to see whether opportunities exist for us to develop something in this space.
And how soon, I mean, if you really had the funds, the capital, the manpower, how soon can we also start? I mean, I'm sure you've had some interactions to say if we had the funding, how soon can we implement such projects in this country?
The economic conditions are right to allow it. It could be deployed quite rapidly. I would say in the space of about 6-month lead time for a project of not too large scale, in the tens of megawatt hours.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to open up, I'm sure you wanted to say something.
Yes, probably to add on what my colleagues are saying is, I think it is important as we discuss on the transition, some of the drivers that we have seen that are driving the growth, especially for distributed generation, that is very common for our sub-Saharan market in relation to the communities that are purely in off-grid areas. I think it is important to start having a conversation on the productive use of the energy, because we have seen that we have people who are deploying the mini grids in very remote areas, but if the community is not aware on the productive use of that power, then that power becomes not very effective for them. So it is important that we have also a conversation on how are we able to create awareness in terms of the productive use. Thank you.
You wanted to say something?
Yes,
Victor?
Wilson. Right now, I like what the regulator said, you know, creating a regulatory framework that would encourage storage. Engineer Bosch spoke about, you know, load shifting, for example, between different times of the day. As it stands right now, there is whatever we generate from 6 in the morning as a PV solar power plant or wind power plant, from 6 in the morning until 6 p.m., you are paid exactly the same tariff.
Okay.
So there's no incentive whatsoever for me to even consider storing it, because as soon as I generate it, I just push it into the grid and it's exactly the same tariff.
Okay.
But if there was a signal that the tariff at 6 in the morning, for example, is different from the tariff at 4 p.m., then I've got every incentive to store it for later discharge at a later time. So this is what the regulator is talking about. So it's very important that, you know, the regulatory framework also clarifies the services that we get from batteries and put economic value to them, because right now there isn't any. When we are deploying it ourselves, is to clients that are looking more at reliability and they're prepared to pay for that.
I'm just thinking from what you were saying, and the tariff for downtime when the grid is off. I mean, like the tour we just had, we got there where they're producing power, and there was load shedding. Maybe a specific tariff for times like that when there's load shedding and somebody's storing energy for onwards placing into the grid. Maybe it's something that you may want to comment before they come through.
He can probably, if you want to talk about it, because he was illustrating, you know, that the demand profile during the day varies, right? There are certain times during the day when demand is higher, and obviously customers are willing to pay more. But you see, the generation profile of our power plant does not actually follow the demand.
Okay.
So we could actually store some of that electricity for use, for discharge at a time when the demand is higher and also the tariffs are higher. Yesterday, Engineer Chikova from Southern African Power Pool was showing us the tariff profile on the sub-market. You know, there are times when tariffs are really, really high. There are times when, you know, in the evenings, for example, when they're as low as 3 to 4 cents, but they've been going up to 18, even sometimes 20 cents. So as an IPP, for example, if the signal is correct, I would also be willing to invest in a battery to be able to take advantage of the economic benefit of discharging at different times of the day. And again, it's a regulation issue, and I'm glad that the regulator has touched on that.
Okay. Would you like to comment on that, or
I would say at the moment, our tariffs are time of use for consumers. They are not real time to say if there's a overall demand in the market or there's high demand in the market. The tariff increases instantaneously that time. We are not there yet.
We are not yet there. You wanted to say something before we moved to the panel?
I just wanted to add on to what Victor said, and it would be possible from a PV plant to store its generation in a battery if load shedding is taking place. But by the time that you can discharge it when load shedding is done at 9:30, 10, 10:30, 11 p.m., you've missed the time at which most people want to use the power.
There are no consumers at that time. I'm just going to open up this discussion for the next 10 minutes. Questions and input. I'll start with my friend at the back there. Can somebody assist us with mic? Let me just walk there. It's actually a long distance, eh?
Thanks, Orson. My question goes out to Jinko. It's some very nice equipment you had on show there. As a consumer or an EPC myself, how will you support us in the country? Manufacturers love throwing out 10-year warranties, 5-year warranties, all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to having the equipment installed on the ground and the engineers experiencing a problem, we don't want to be put on to a helpline in China or in the UK or anywhere like that. How are you going to safeguard your end user with your product going forward? Thank you.
You can shoot. Put your money where your mouth is, Jinko.
Thank you so much for the question. So what we are currently doing is that, number one, we are collaborating with the local institutions, the TVETs, in terms of building capacity. So we are collaborating like in other countries, we in terms of training. So at some certain point, we're able to offer our modules and probably our storage to be used for the training program to ensure that even the young upcoming engineers are aware about the technology. Other than that is that we have our local distributors here in Zimbabwe. So with the distribution network that we have, we're also empowering them. And we also have plans to look into having service centers. So we have done some service centers in other regions. And so with the increasing demand for storage and the lithium-ion-based solutions, we'll be looking to having service centers. And we're also keen, even in collaborating with you as an EPC, if you have the capacity, then we can always have a discussion on that. Thank you.
Yes, any hand up? Okay, there's another one. Engineer D, I'm coming to you.
Thank you, Engineer Shinyaza. My question is, we already have small power from mini hydros as well as the solar PVs that are already in place. When there is load shedding, then we lose out on all that generation capacity because they cannot feed into the grid. Isn't it a business case for you to establish the grid requirements in terms of how much power is needed so that the mini hydros or the solar projects can continue to provide power on the grid, and we can then introduce the power banks, the batteries, to cater for that? We are looking at a generation capacity of 12 hours. The mini grids and the PVs are able then to take care of that during the day, and the battery bank itself then becomes the anchor for the grid to ensure that continuous supply continues to come in. That is my question. Is it possible?
Zera, may you hold on that one while we get another question, and then I'll have you guys answer.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to ask. My question is directed to Jinko. And basically, it's a general question to the effect of the recommended or acceptable cycles that you would want to see on the battery storage systems to ensure longevity of the same.
Thank you. We've got any other question? Okay, I'll allow Zara to respond and then Jinko will come through.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure I heard the question fully well, but all I can say is that most of the units that are generating, ZESA doesn't load shed those lines. They try by all means not to load shed those lines.
Sorry. Do you want to clarify that question? Because I think he just answered part of it.
Maybe the question was more or less on load shedding only, but we are looking at even the distribution line network integrity. That also affects the smaller units from feeding in. But from what we had yesterday from the visit, not day before yesterday, the assumption was load shedding is taking place, so we cannot feed into the grid. Maybe possibly it was a distribution network fault. Those are the two things. My point was saying that instead of us continuing to invest in increasing the cost of power generation in the country, we already have a lot of solar systems that are on-grid type with no battery bank. And we also have the mini grids that are on-grid type with no battery banks. As ZERA, to guarantee supply during the day, from the presentation that was done, I believe there is a business case for a large scale setup in which the battery banks can actually be put on those mini grids so that we can guarantee the supply as a total, as a nation, as compared to just having probably PPC, a cement manufacturing company benefiting from those benefits. Because they implementing it means that they know the benefits directly associated with having both the renewables, the battery bank, as well as the grid. They know the advantage that is there. So we as a country, we should be in a position to also know the advantage that is there in having a large-scale battery bank system that ensures that the grid will always have enough power for all the smaller units to feed into the grid. Thank you.
Engineer, did you get that?
Yes, I think
Okay.
I get the question. I think I answered that question in my previous statement that we are looking at developing a regulatory framework for this service so that we can license it and determine appropriate tariffs for this kind of service.
Okay. I won't put you on the spot, but from the sound of it, it's still in the making. How soon or when can we expect a framework for this so that those who want to invest in the space have the requisite regulations?
I would say in 2023, by the end of the year, we should have this framework.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Chinko, there was a question for you.
Yes, so the issue about cycles, so when you consider the key metrics in terms of value for money, lithium is the way to go. There's no doubt about that in comparison to the normal lead flow batteries. So in terms of cycles, we are looking at 6,000 cycles. then that would translate to about 15 years in terms of the lifetime of that batteries. And what we are saying is that our standard guarantee is 10 years, but is extendable, especially for the residential space. So the cycles are 6,000. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm going to ask each of you to make just your last statements or remarks vis-a-vis the subject that we're talking. I'm not sure where I should start. Should I start with you?
All right, thank you, Wilson. So in Zimbabwe, we're very fortunate to have Kariba. So locally, if we do rapidly expand in PV generation, Kariba could very significantly act as a battery for us. However, in Southern Africa, as we saw in Engineer Chikova's presentation yesterday, 59% of the installed capacity is still coal. So in the region, we would have to deal with that variation as shown in the duck curve. And for that, this battery technology does seem very interesting. And it would be good if we could have some framework from the regulator soon so that we could take action and act on these opportunities as they come up. Thank you.
Thank you. And the regulator?
We certainly think that battery storage provides an excellent opportunity for supporting renewable energy production, because renewables are intermittent. Battery storage, they support this renewable energy production. And we think they are an important element in the energy transition, because remember what we are changing the way we produce, distribute and consume energy.
We are changing the way we produce, distribute, and consume energy. Thank you for that. Victor?
Colleagues, battery storage costs a lot of money. Even though prices have been falling, but it's still a lot of money. I mentioned a case, a live case we're working on. The battery solution on its own is almost like $15 million. And I come back to the point that it's important that we continue to improve the conditions of doing business for domestic investors, but also just as important to be able to attract international investors. The two must work hand in hand. And battery technology going forward is integral to the rapid deployment of renewables. We will not move much further with renewables without also integrating batteries in our systems. And it costs money. And for money to come in, it's about the conditions. And so we're very encouraged by what has happened, the kind of intervention that we saw from the government. I really think, like I said, that is what is defining our immediate future in this space. Thank you.
Thank you. And
I think from us as an OEM is that my parting shot is more collaboration. We need to have more of these events whereby we are able to bring on board all the key stakeholders, both from the financial side, OEMs, the government, and we need to collaborate more. Then secondly, we need to invest more on the training component. We need to develop the skills in the sub-Saharan market. So that will drive our growth in terms of renewable energy and making sure that we're able to reduce the people who are not able to have access to clean power and electricity.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to just food for thought from an accounting point of view. We always look at our balance sheet and the value of our balance sheet. The ever decreasing price of the investment in terms of battery storage, be it PV. Today you are going to spend 15 million, and then just a year later, the price of those things have gone down to maybe half. And being an accountant, looking at your balance sheet, there is an issue there. How do we guarantee our balance sheet, the safety of our balance sheet based on the falling price of the products that are coming through? It's food for thought. Hope we can discuss around this while we're going to have our next break. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for sharing your thoughts, and we'll move on to the next stage. Thank you very much, gentlemen. A round of applause for this. You may shoot.
We want to announce that the ministry has been working very closely with the World Bank. And they have done a solar integration study for our electricity network. That solar integration study identified substations that can take up additional solar power for both cases where there is no reinforcement to the grid and for cases where there is a need for reinforcing the grid. So 5 projects were identified, and these 5 projects we actually proceeded to do feasibility studies for those 5 projects. And they have a total capacity of about 70 megawatts. In addition to that, the solar integration study indicated that our grid has a capacity to take up to 860 megawatts from solar, including a component on battery energy storage. So very soon, this project will be officially announced so that it answers some of the questions to do with capacity in terms of how much batteries can assist the network to get additional power from variable renewables. Thank you.
Thank you for that update. I would like you to ask you to come through. I think we're coming to almost the end of our session this morning, but we're doing a roundup, looking at the resolutions or the proposals that have come through. So I'll ask Dr. Zuki to come and lead in a short program where we're getting points that have come out from our discussions and our plenary sessions, and see proposals that will be taken through for implementation. Thank you very much, everyone, for your attentiveness. I just want to remind each other that our program must end at 12. When it does end at 12, we're going to have our lunch. Thereafter, we'll be instructed what time we'll come back into this place. Just something that we all can take care of when we're going out. Just please make sure you have a mask, maybe in your pocket. Just keep it in your pocket. And number 2, your COVID certificate. I've got one. Mine is actually on my ID. So please bring your ID for purposes of our next program. So Dr. Zuku will take us through answering questions. So let's quickly raise our hands and share our thoughts, and then as we wrap up our program for the day. Dr. Zuki.
Thank you, Director of Ceremonies. I can't beam from here, is it? So I'll just read through some of the points that have been noted from our discussions since we came to attend this conference and expo. Allow me just a minute to open up the file. Some of the issues I highlighted yesterday, and the only thing that changes as of today is probably the semantics, the words. I tried to follow the UN system for crafting resolutions, where you start by sort of identifying a problem and then come up with an action item or an action plan for that problem in one resolution. So roughly we do have, at the moment, I will say maybe 11 resolutions. I will read them through. Resolution number 1 goes as follows. Having observed that renewable energy power plants are experiencing challenges in evacuating power to the grid, as evidenced by the visit to the 5 megawatt solar gas power plant, the developer is encouraged to seek additional funding to upscale these solar power plants, while ZETDC strengthens the grid and possibly ring fences these plants from load shedding. And this is to be actioned by ZETDC and Sorgas by Q2 of 2023. I hope that rings a bell. Okay, I move to the second resolution. Noting that 2 policies are being developed by the ministry in collaboration with the Ministry of Transport and Ministry of Environment. Both policies are now at cabinet paper stage. As such, the ministry should expeditiously finalize the development of the energy efficiency policy and the electric mobility framework and launch them before June 2023. And this is to be actioned by the Ministry of Energy and Power Development. Resolution number 3, realizing that many investors require projects that are ready for implementation, especially in the hydropower sector, feasibility studies are needed for the sites that have been identified in the Zambezi Basin. At present, the Devil's Gorge expression of interest has been floated and evaluation of the same is in progress. And this is to be actioned by the Zambezi River Authority, ZESA, and the ministry. The fourth resolution, guided by the existence of a solar water heating business proposal that was developed by Soltrain, UNDP, and other partners. The ministry is requested to proceed to work with partners, particularly financiers, in order to procure funding for the National Solar Water Heater Program. The ministry is also urged to review solar water heating regulations to ensure that they are aligned with the Constitution. And this is also to be actioned by the ministry, ZERA, and the Attorney General's office. Our fifth resolution reads as follows. Having realized that there are various rooftop and ground-mounted systems that have been installed by individuals, homeowners, farmers, and corporates, the conference calls upon ZETDC to mop up additional capacity from prosumers and launch an awareness campaign and also facilitate the reduction in connection hurdles. Furthermore, the ministry and its parastatals to expeditiously amend the net metering regulations in order to allow for net metering as well as financial rewards for those who have excess capacity at their premises. And this is to be actioned by ZESA, ZERA, the ministry, and also the Attorney General's office. Our resolution number 6, aware that renewable energy and energy efficiency technologies continue to evolve rapidly, the conference calls upon the ministry to work closely with the ministries responsible for primary and secondary education and that responsible for tertiary education in order to update the current curricula so that it incorporates current topics in renewable energy and energy efficiency. I wish to highlight that this is already work in progress and the ministry has been in contact with NAMACO. Resolution number 7, noting that green hydrogen has become the most topical issue in the energy sector and is touted as the best way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the hard to abate sectors of the economy. A government is urged to develop a strategy on green hydrogen as well as create awareness on how it promotes the transition to clean energy technologies. Also, to ensure the incorporation of the green hydrogen strategy development process into the 2024 national budget, with particular attention to having visits to countries like Namibia, where projects for green hydrogen for Expo are being muted. Our resolution number 8, believing that investors and IPPs need comfort and confidence to finance local renewable energy and energy efficiency projects, the ministry is implored to lobby for the following. Item 1, establishment of an escrow accounts for exporters to cover foreign obligations. Item 2, establish local escrow account that covers 6 to 12 months of foreign obligations by IPPs to de-risk off-taker default issues. And lastly, to prioritize the energy sector and expedite forex allocations at the auction floors, among other things. And this is to be actioned by the Minister of Finance and RBZ. Our resolution 9, welcoming and acknowledging His Excellency's policy call to beneficiate and value-add lithium before it is exported, the ministry calls upon government to enhance the strategy by including other value chains such as battery manufacturing. The same initiative be extended to other energy minerals and rare earth energy materials such as the platinum group of metals, copper, cobalt, manganese, nickel, chrome, zinc, graphite, to be considered for local beneficiation as well. And this is to be actioned by the ministry responsible for mining and ministry responsible for energy. Our resolution 10, call for creation of a knowledge platform for renewable energy for awareness and communication. Stakeholders can then keep track of events and share information through that platform. Resolution 11, to consider and give preference to local experts who have proven themselves locally and internationally in developing energy projects. Local experts are also encouraged to work with international consultants in developing bankable projects. And that covers items that we have noted so far in our deliberations. With that, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zuku. I'll just ask you to remain just for a minute. At one of our monkey discussions, you know the monkey discussions, where we speak in our corners, one of the issues that most people have been asking, everything starts and ends with money. Why is Ministry of Finance not with us? So maybe just to also, those who have come through to me asking that question, I'm sure Dr. Zuku can assure us what will happen as we go through the next conference that's coming through.
Okay. Yeah, we will make a deliberate effort to engage the Minister of Finance at principal level so that they can also join us in the next workshop. I think this is not a new suggestion. I think in our second conference that we had in Mutare, yes, it was also mentioned. So we will continue to knock on the doors of our fellow ministry so that they can join us. I don't know if the principal wants to add on to that permanent secretary.
Yes, thank you. The Honorable Minister of Finance was invited. An official letter was given. The person who was supposed to come here unfortunately couldn't make it because there was a coinciding visit by the executive director from the African Development Bank. So that's what I was told. I actually followed up to make sure they are here.
Thank you for allaying the monkey discussions that we've been having. I think those who've been asking me that question, you are now answered. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Dr. Zuku, with the resolutions that you have come up with. We're going to share all the presentations, the resolutions on one of our online links, and we'll share the link so that you can download or view all the presentations that we have heard. Thank you very much.
May I propose one last resolution? I think it's the one where we are noting the need for rapid deployment of renewable energy technologies, that it will require battery storage as one of the critical elements to ensure the variability is managed. We would then like to resolve that ZERA urgently develops the relevant regulations to ensure that this is made possible. Thank you.
Doc, you've noted that one. We'll also share it. I'm just going to allow two people. Yes, your hand, you may. Okay. From there, Victor, I'll come through to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was going to also suggest a resolution in line with what the PS has just said. But further to that, I would wish to suggest that, well, I found it quite interesting when the presenters were talking about Kariba Dam being one of our natural storage, or battery if you want to put it. So it would seem that we seem to be quite more focused to traditional batteries, you know, when you talk of lithium batteries, lead acid batteries, things like that. But I'm aware that there are some technologies which are emerging of some storage systems like flow batteries or even sodium ion batteries, which perhaps are even cheaper, and they are quite modern technologies which can prove to be cheaper and can hold much greater capacity and can be used for grid stabilization. And I want to think that as you craft the statutory instrument, we should be able to look at such new emerging technologies and allow maybe our tertiary institutions to investigate on those and be able to develop such storage systems for our grid. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer. I think Doc has noted that one. Victor?
May I ask you to also consider various fiscal incentives as well when we are looking at, you know, even the deployment of batteries, even just our renewables. Key among them, of course, we've been talking about duties, but VAT is a very important aspect as well. A lot of countries are moving away from VAT on imports, particularly on imports. You see that is happening in Kenya. You see, you know, many countries are moving along that direction. In our country here, we pay VAT on imports, but there are not even any discernible mechanisms for recovering that VAT, passing it in and out. So please, when you talk to your colleagues, you know, at the Ministry of Finance, would you kindly consider that? I think it would help a lot.
Thank you very much, Victor. At one of our monkey discussions, somebody actually brought up that issue. the VAT issue. I think it needs to be looked at. I'll ask Mr. Mazambani to just weigh in.
Thank you, Victor, for that. I think you really put us in a spot. You forcing us to talk about something which we haven't submitted to our principal yet, but we've done a study. We commissioned a study by a consultant. We validated the findings from the consultant, and we will be approaching our principals once my board has considered it and approved it. It's actually before the board right now. Once it's approved by the board, we'll be approaching the principal with the pros and cons of doing away with the VAT on renewable energy products and energy efficient products as well. Because that we feel that there are numerous benefits from such an initiative. Thank you.
We spoke and they heard, so I think it's now a case of implementing these many thoughts that have come through. At this stage, I want to thank you for being a wonderful audience. The next segment that we are going to have a distinguished guest amongst ourselves. So for processes of security, we are all going to go for our lunch, and then when we do come back, let's make sure we have the COVID certificate and of course our ID. We are going out for lunch now, and we should be back here by exactly 1 o'clock. And this time it's not my African time, it is indeed 1 o'clock. So I hope we all come back at 1 o'clock. Thank you very much and enjoy your lunch.
Wilson, maybe just to tell our delegates that they should bring their masks as well. We're also trying to make a plan so that you can collect masks by